Hello everyone, Ron again, and in this video, we're going to be talking about a plugin that you may be familiar with, but I haven't done a video on it. I think it's pretty old by now, and it's a free plugin, but it's called Izotope Vinyl. So it was actually a recommendation from a friend of mine, and I was like, okay, he doesn't know what it does, I guess, or maybe he didn't know about it. So I was like, I'll just cover it for him. So that's what we're going to be doing here. So first of all, obviously, Izotope Vinyl is made by Izotope. And what it is a plugin that is designed to make things sound older. So right now it's bypassed, so it's not doing anything. But I'm going to go over the most important controls in this video. So starting on this part on the left, you're going to see that there are different years. And of course, if you know what vinyl is itself, it's like the big records that people used to use, and they have those giant like record players. Those records are made of vinyl, and after they recorded the song would be printed onto vinyl records. So this is referencing that. Now, back in the day, if I remember this correctly, when things were recorded on things like tape machines, you would have like this revolutions per minute, and it would affect the quality of the sound. So that's important. Lo-fi is kind of like legitimately what it sounds like. Like it's lower fidelity. So hi-fi is higher fidelity in that you have a higher quality of sound. So lo-fi, the entire premise of making lo-fi music is that there's less fidelity. It's like music that's made potentially in a modern way, but it sounds like how it would back then. And it's more relaxing. Okay, so the wear is emulating the fact that over time, the vinyl records would actually they'd have wear and tear on them. So when you play them back, it would affect the way that the music will sound. You know? So when you see things like wow and flutter, it's because of that. A person would unearth a vinyl record and they would play that record. And because of the distortions in the vinyl record, because it's warped through the wear and tear of perhaps heat or cold, it will sound different. And when you get to this side, this is like those imperfections being emulated. So you got noise, right? That's mechanical noise. This is like electrical noise. And these things come from analog equipment because it's not perfect like how digital equipment is. So at any point along the way, you could kind of incur that. And back then, there might be like nothing you could do about it. Of course, we have things like RX 10 and 11 now, but back then, that just becomes a part of the sound. So it's like when you're listening to something that's really old, when it has all those imperfections in it, you feel that nostalgia, and that's what people are after. Because some people feel like music sounds too clean and too perfect, so they want it to sound like how it did. Nothing wrong with it. It's actually pretty fun. When you look at this, you've got dust, and so if you see that noise, emulating there being dust on the record. Scratch is the same. So you can see it sounds like the record is scratched. So it's like jumping. And warp is essentially, if I remember correctly, it's like pitch modulation because when the vinyl record is warped, it will actually modulate in pitch. And then you've got different models. You got a bypass button. This is going to be mono stereo and output gain. So you can turn it down if it becomes too loud because it may sound like distorted. Whenever you add distortion or wave shaping or saturation to something, it could become louder because of harmonics being added and things like that. So that's the long and short of how you use vinyl. You know, this is one of those plugins where you kind of use it and just see what it does, and it's sort of more efficient that way rather than to know all of the details. Because I've like looked them up and read the manual. I can't remember exactly what where does, you know. But if you want to know more about it, then of course you could just look at the manual. But those are the basic things you need to know. So what does it sound like would be the question. So we're gonna go back to one of the beats that I was using in the previous video. Right? Now that's what it sounds like with vinyl being bypassed. So if I turn it on and select the year, you will notice that it'll sound like it's on an older machine. So this is actually a technique that you can use when you're creating beats, where you can make something sound very old and lo-fi, because what it is that one of the ways that they produce this effect is that back in the day, the speakers were not as good. Speakers, if I remember correctly, they're sort of like a descendant of the phonograph, which is like became the phone. So if somebody was recording something on one of those things, it didn't have the kind of fidelity that everything has now. It couldn't record the low end very well, and it couldn't reproduce it very well either. So that's why when you play stuff back on those older machines, it's not that they didn't write bass parts or low end. It's just that it couldn't be reproduced until technology advanced the way that we understand it now. So that's one technique for making things sound like they're older. And another thing would be like this warping situation, which I'll show in a few minutes, is like pitch modulation. You know something sounds older because it's on an old vinyl record because it has that pitch modulation. The pitch is not perfect. So, but rather than to just describe it, let's listen to it. Highlight those. And I'm going to play it again. And I'll just shuffle through the settings so you can hear it rather than me just talking about it. Okay, so I don't know about how easy it is to hear, but you can see as we cycle through these different things, there are different effects that are produced. And essentially, when you go back in time, it's like high passing the beat is one of the major things that happens. So there's less and less bass the earlier it is, going back to 1930. You can hear that when you add wear to it, it's like low passing. So it's like the higher end is sort of more muted, and that would be the effect that would happen when there's wear and tear on the vinyl record. As we get into the 2000s, there's more bass naturally because technology improved. So that makes sense. And the two that we did not do are lo-fi and spin down. But you can hear when we add dust, you can hear that. You can hear that the beat skips when you add scratch into it. And you can hear that when you turn these up, there's noise. The electrical noise sounds kind of like the humming that you would hear from a machine or from like wires. And the mechanical noise sounds like dust still, but it just sounds like sort of like plosives. And the really fun one to do is like spin down. So I'll show you what it sounds like. And lo-fi, I'm gonna lower this in case it gets louder. So let's check it out. What does it sound like? So that's the main thing that I was hearing. It's like you can really hear the distortion pronounced on that bottle cap noise. Yeah. So that would be the same thing that will happen if you use a plugin that is just lowering the sample rate or something similar. Lowering like the sample rate and the bit depth of something while it's in your DAW. That's a technique to try to produce that same kind of effect. And of course, it's more pronounced when you go back to 1930 because that's how this plugin works. The cool thing about this plugin, besides it being free, is also the fact that it has all of this stuff like packaged in one. So there's a lot of times with FL Studio, especially, you could do like anything you want under the sun, but it's like you have to you have to put all the stuff together to make it that way. And the final thing to check out is the spin down, which is like one of the most fun. So here we go. So that's what a spin down is. It's like something you're probably familiar with, but now you know that it has a name if you didn't. So spin down is just beat comes to an end. It's like everything slows down and then it just concludes. And it will stay in that state until you hit this. Like everything could still be playing and it won't play anything else. It'll be like it just ended. For that reason, you can actually automate these things. So we hit bypass, for example, go to the add automation for the last tweak parameter. And then it should add it here. So now detach this so it won't leave anymore. And So we go to drop, create the automation point, make this hold. That hold as well. Now, check this out. Okay. Now, let's think about this in the context from an early measure, right? So we go here. Before this, and what you could do is you could cut this, take a section, you can copy it so that vinyl will turn off, and then you play it from that earlier point, let it turn on, let it turn off again when the beat drops so that the bass is more pronounced. Check it out. So these are some of the ways that you could use vinyl. And that basically should cover it, you know? Of course, you can do whatever you want. But I just wanted to show some ideas and briefly explain the main points about how to use it. And if you made it to the end of this video, then thank you for that. I hope that you got something out of it. Suggestions are always welcome in the comments. If I missed something or got something wrong, let me know. I don't think I did though. But yeah, there's always that possibility. So, if you made it this far, I hope that this was helpful to you. And thank you for watching as usual. And have an awesome day. Peace.